Improv.
Please welcome Andrew Catala speaking on improv.
I say improv because I was putting together an ed tip about jokes and humor, and then I got a request to include a lot of other things, so there will be digressions. Let's start with the humor. The founder of this club, Mary Ellen Drummond, often says, she's often asked, do I need humor in my speech? And her answer is always, only if you want to get paid. So it's an interesting point, but I want to say about that, humor does not mean jokes. Jokes are tricky. Jokes are archaic. Jokes were done in the 50s by comedians. Nowadays on TV, comedians don't go up on stage and tell jokes. They tell their observations about how silly life is. They tell amusing stories, anecdotes. That's what we do, not jokes. Jokes are really tricky. Jokes require a setup and a punchline. And the setup can't be too short because then you're into the joke, the punchline before you get it. But they can't be too long because I will be asleep if you start talking a setup that just goes on and on. So it's very tricky. The timing, they always say in humor, it's always about the timing. Another thing about jokes is they are usually at someone's expense. Let's tell lawyer jokes, and whatever the theme may be. There was a woman in the sister club to this club who loved to do the jokes because she wanted to tell her blonde jokes because she was blonde. So she would love to get up here and tell you how stupid blonde women are. Is this a good idea? Not for a public speaker, not for someone who wants the goodwill of the audience. So jokes are a trap. Jokes only work when they're self-deprecating. So if I can tell you an amusing story about another stupid thing I did, and you've heard quite a few, that helps ingratiate you to the audience. Either they're laughing at you or they're thinking, I've done something stupid like that. So self-deprecating humor is the way to go. An easy alternative to, I want to digress for a second on something I just remembered from, I was watching a show from Britain, and this politician was struggling to put on a speech. And the advisor says, just start with a joke. Everyone loves a joke. And that is the most ridiculous advice I've ever heard. How many speeches through the ages do you remember that started with a joke? Was it Gettysburg Address? Martin Luther King? Good speeches don't start with a joke. Now, if you can tell an amusing anecdote, that's an alternative way to go. So, two alternative ways to go: an amusing anecdote, especially about yourself or somebody famous, and a quotation. So, amusing anecdotes work. I'm reminded of Abraham Lincoln. He was being debated, he was being challenged, and he said, I've been accused of being two-faced, but I ask you, if I was two-faced, is this a face I would present to you? That is self-deprecating. That works. You know he had the audience in the palm of his hand when that happened. So be careful about jokes. An amusing anecdote works. Something that happened to you, something that was amusing, something that you're not that proud of, but you can use as a lesson for the audience. The other way to go is a quotation. The most quoted person, I think, is Mark Twain, because he is so pithy. He can use just a few words and have you thinking and laughing. One of my favorites is, man is the only creature that blushes or has a need to. It's like a punchline. It makes you think. But even better than that, the one where it goes, obey your superiors if you have any. That makes you think. It makes you smile. It's a good way to start a speech, which brings me to the most important point. If it does not relate to your theme and your message, throw it out. I've heard people come up here and just deliver some joke, has nothing to do with their speech. Not a good idea. And it's not that easy to find a joke that ties into your speech. It's much easier to do an amusing anecdote and spin off of that. Now, I was asked to do a few things, comment about Toastmasters and you. That's the operations manual for the club. Most clubs have an operations manual. If you're scheduled to do a role, it's a great idea to read about the role the night before or even on the way here. Seriously, many of us who are experienced forget things because we do not do that. And one of the things that came up was I did a general evaluation ed tip one time, and it was well received, and it was placed into Toastmasters and You. There are a lot of things in there we need to pay attention to. For instance, when you do the general evaluation, it's not how much fun you had the meeting or how great the meeting was. It's what happened at the meeting. Did we do a good job? Did we make some mistakes? Did we forget to shake hands? All kinds of things. We want to be reminded of the things that would make things better. And the most important thing about that for the GE and the Toastmaster is the first thing you got to do when you come in the morning is take attendance. You need